Okay, so now that we have our files generated, let's take a quick look at what we have here at the root folder. And here we can see some different files and folders. For example, this is the M file. This is where you put all your credentials. Let's actually open this file. And as we can see here, this will be the M file for a local environment. So if you have, for example, a dev environment or a production environment, here is where you will change that parameter. And if you have different credentials, obviously, for the different environments, yes, where you will have to set all the different parameters. And also if you have different third-party services, this is where you will add the keys and passwords for that. Okay, so now let's look at other folders. And here we can see we have the app folder. This is probably one of the most important folders in Laravel. This is where you will be working most of the time. Here is where you will add the routes, the models, the console commands. So for example, here on the console folder is where you will be adding console commands to run with Artisan. Here is an exceptions folder. You probably won't be working too much here. And here on the HTTP folder is where you will be adding controllers, middleware. You probably will be spending a lot of time adding controllers here, so mapping that to the routes of your application. And here we also have the middleware folder. This is where you will add all the middleware classes. The middleware classes are usually used to filter requests. So for example, if you have if you want to redirect the user to somewhere to the different route based on if the user is authenticated or not, or for example manipulate an input field the user sends through a form. So Laravel comes with a lot of middleware classes that you can use, but it's not really that common that you add a lot of your custom middleware classes. Okay, so now let's take a look at the models folder. This is obviously where you have all your models classes. In previous versions of Laravel, the models were located here at the root app folder, but now I think it's as a better practice, you have a models folder, and this is where you add all your models. And let's check the providers. This is where you will have all the service providers. So let's say you use MailChimp for creating newsletters and adding users to your newsletter. You may have a service class for that. So it's like a client class that you add methods, so to add the user to that newsletter, to remove users, all that stuff. Here you will create a service provider class for that service, so you won't have to create a new instance every time you want to use that service class. Basically, you can just call a get method and get the instance with the proper credentials and proper configuration for that class. It's a kind of more advanced pattern, but it's important to use this pattern when your project starts growing. Okay, so we also have this other folder. This is Bootstrap. You won't be doing too much things here. This is used by Laravel core. We also have this config folder. This is where you add all the different mappings for your env variables. So for example, let's check this one, the app. So as we can see here, we are assigning this env parameter, app name, to this variable. So anytime you want to get a parameter from the env file, this is where you do that mapping. You should never use this directly in your code. You should always map to the config file and use the config helper to get that parameter value. Okay, so let's look at this other one. This is a really important one, the database folder is where you have all your migrations. So anytime you create a table, you update your schema, all that stuff, this is where Laravel stores all those classes. And the factories and seeders are used when you want to create some dummy data for testing. Okay, so now let's look at the public folder. This folder is what you will have on your web server as your document root. So all those files here will be served by your web server. The resources folder is pretty much where you will have all the different files for your front end. So you will have CSS, you have JavaScript files, translations files, and the views, which is where you have all the templates. Laravel uses the Blade template agent, and this is basically HTML combined with some directives from Blade. So for example, you can print things with these double curly braces, and you can actually call native PHP functions. And you can use all these different directives from Blade, like the if, else, and some more. Okay, so we also have this other folder, the CSS, is where you have your source CSS or Sass. Here on the JavaScript is the same. You can have all your components for if you use React or any other kind of framework, all the different JavaScript for that. And when you compile, for example, if you have Sass and you compile the CSS, the compiled version will go to this folder, the public folder. So all the things you have here won't be public unless you compile them. Okay, so let's take a look at this other folder, the routes folder. And this is where you have all the different routes, obviously. You have, for example, if you have an API, this is where you will be adding routes. Or if you have just a regular web application. So in this case, Laravel is creating a route for the homepage. So when you have, let's say you have a welcome template and you want to return that template directly, this is how you do it. Okay, so what else? And here we have the storage folder. This is where we have the logs, some cache from the framework, and things like that. And here on the test folder is where you will have all your unit test classes and all the different test classes that you will creating on the project. And finally, the vendor folder is where Composer will be adding all the different dependencies to your project. So these are all the different classes that you have on your Composer file. And some other files we have here on this root folder. This is the artisan binary that is you use to run console commands. This is the Composer.json where you will be adding all the different dependencies to your project, all the different packages that you use on your project. The log file is created by Composer, so you won't be changing anything there. This is the docker-compose file that is by Sail to interact with Docker. The package.json that is used by npm. So it's similar to the Composer.json. This is where you will be adding all the different dependencies, all the different packages. This other file is used by PHP unit, the usual readme markdown file that you can use for GitHub, basically. This server.php, which is used when you want to run the web server that comes with Laravel. And the webpack.mix is the package that Laravel used to interact with the webpack. So here you will be adding all the different mappings for JavaScript, for Sass, all the compilers. So let's say you have, if you are using, for example, Sass, here is where you will add the mapping between the Sass source file and the compiled version. And that's pretty much it. I think this should give you an idea of what you can find on a Laravel project. Let me know in the comments if I missed something or if there's any question. And I see you on the next video. Don't forget to like if this video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye.